There you've got pro-choice protesters parading outside the home in the Commonwealth of Virginia of Supreme Court Justice Sam Alito, making their angry message quite clear.
It comes as the Senate is set to vote on an expansive abortion rights bill tomorrow, which is expected to fall well short of the needed votes. Legal scholar Richard Epstein joins us now to talk about this. Good morning to you, Richard.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. What's your reaction to this? We saw this is the third justice that people have stormed into the neighborhood, filling up the streets and yelling things in front of their house.
Well, this is the first I've heard of it, but it tells you the dangers of what happens when there's an early release of an opinion. This is not simply a disinterested statement of the truth. It's an effort, I think, probably to intimidate the justice and the other justices who voted with him to change the way in which they voted. I mean, the only thing they can do is to ignore it. At this particular point, I don't think any legal action can be taken against the protesters, but there's always a fine line between protesting on the one hand and intimidation on the other. And so somebody like myself who wrote about this as a legal issue now finds himself in the middle of a political stew, which is not exactly my standard beat.
Well, but this, we haven't visited this particular issue in this format for a while, Richard. But there is a federal law that makes it illegal to picket or protest in front of a member of the court's home if the intent is to influence. And we have not yet heard from the Attorney General of the United States. I mean, clearly, when it's peaceful, that's one thing. But given that there's a federal statute, you'd think that they would realize, maybe we shouldn't be doing this because it's against the law.
But they think maybe they should be doing it because they hope it will work. I don't believe it will work. Look, I mean, one of the difficulties you have in this particular case is the president has made his position perfectly clear about how much he supports the protesters. And now if you have a statute like this, however clear it may be, it's going to be dependent on Merrick Garland. The irony of a potential Supreme Court justice now being Attorney General being, I think, quite apparent. It's up to him to essentially say that you have to either disperse it or put it back, bring police there of one form or another. It's very difficult when you first hear about this to get on the show to know what's going on, but there's a long history of a fine line between protest and intimidation, including a recent Supreme Court case from a couple of years ago where there was a statute which said, well, can you have protesters come within 30 feet of an entrance to an abortion clinic? And the Supreme Court, I thought, wrongly said they could get that close so long as there's not exact intimidation. But in my view, you need clear lines on cases of this sort, and I don't know exactly where they're standing, but certainly if they're going to impede ingress and egress, it's going to be looking like something of a crime, as far as I can tell. But again, it's just very difficult from the distance to do this. I hope there are no counter-demonstrations. I wouldn't want them. What I would want people to do is to back off. From what you said, it seems as though these things are taking place over the night, right? So that it's after dark and it's before morning, which simply makes this thing even more aggravating. But it's very ironic to be talking to me about something which is, shall we say, not normally my beat. I've done a lot of history on this particular problem where the question has been with respect to labor unions and picketing and so forth. This issue goes back to 1896 in a famous case called Begelon and Gunter, where there was a very sharp division as to whether or not picketing was intimidation or picketing was information. And that particular conflict and the fine line between the two of them continues to dog us now, and it's 126 years after that particular decision came down.
Richard, I know Roe versus Wade, you have said in this new Fox Nation episode, it's called Fox Nation 101, Overturning Roe versus Wade. You have said, you're outlining why you believe Roe versus Wade was incorrectly decided. Tell us why.
Well, the original decision, I think everybody agrees in some sense, was incorrectly decided. What happened is they had no secure textual basis for what was going on. Indeed, they weren't even sure whether it was an enumerated or an unenumerated right. And if you're going to try to overturn the law in every existing state in the United States and you have a very wishy-washy opinion, it's going to give you criticism. The general view has long been that rules like this have been long established are not to be overturned by judicial behavior. This is quite different, therefore, from the situation with respect to privacy in Griswold decided previous years, where every state but Connecticut had already legalized the sale of contraceptives, not only to married couples, but to single people as well. So this thing comes as an absolute seismic shock. And then what you try to do is to figure out what the rights are, and he starts to invent the trimester distinctions, complete ability to do what you will in the first trimester, which is the most dangerous, then some limited powers over the second trimester, and then after that, complete control by the state over the third. This proves to be unstable. Yeah, this proves to be unstable. Then they change it to an undue burden with respect to Casey. And this is kind of making it up as you go along. Right. It's simply the definition of liberty normally has to be juxtaposed against the police power, and the protection of the life of the infant, whether it's an unborn child or a future child, you can debate. But nobody ever thought that that was a state interest that wasn't worthy of protection. And now it gets demoted to the point where it's virtually nothing, because the period in which there's the greatest power of the individual is the period in which abortions are most likely to take place at will. So this has been a constant struggle, and the reason why it is so live today is the people who were opposed to Roe on both moral grounds and on legal grounds were completely unpersuaded by the opinion. So this issue has not come to rest. This is very different from cases like Obergefell dealing with same-sex marriage, where even if they overturn the decision tomorrow, the overwhelming census in this country is that they would legalize it, even for people who have some moral reservation about the practice. So it's a very different situation from every other case. It's unique, as Justice Alito said.
No kidding. All right. You certainly understand the history, and that's why you're in the Fox Nation special. Richard Epstein, we thank you very much for joining us today from Chicago.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.